Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield. We're going to do several of these. This is a Saturday afternoon here at the masturbating, the institute, the Institute for Masturbating in San Luis Obispo, California, and this is the day when I've cleaned the bird cage. Just so you know what goes on, we don't just read books pointlessly here. We actually clean the bird cage on Saturdays and clean the office. And afterwards, I try to knock off a few of these as fast as I can, because if I do them slowly, I'll actually start thinking about how I have not done these very well. They're just totally off the top of my head and as quick as I possibly can make them. Just to keep me out of trouble. Clear mountain water, no pixels. We're campaigning for a post-tech decade, long after the tech has taken over our lives. And today we're going to talk very briefly about a book I've been reading for the past, a writer I've been reading over the years, and have finally read his major novel, CHEVENGUR, by Andrey Platonov, or Platonov. I don't care how you pronounce it. And I'm going to put a little link to a short piece I wrote for The Spectator about this kind of amazing and difficult and sometimes boring and sometimes beautiful and brilliant novel. And I'll give you a little bit of background. We've talked about Platonov in the past, and this is a novel which was originally finished it was prepared for publication in 1929 in Russia, and it was considered so offensive to the political powers of the time, particularly Stalin, because it is very pro revolution, and it's very upset about the violences it sees being committed in the name of that revolution, particularly against the kulaks and the bourgeoisie and people who are kind of middle class people who are often slaughtered in order to build these sort of called collectives or collective farms, collective cities, and so forth. So it doesn't let the dead lie quietly. It tries to keep them alive for us and to let us know what happened to some of these people. It's about a lot of different characters, but it was published in 29. I forgot the important part. It was finished in 1929. It was set for publication, and then the publishers at this time, there was a lot of reaction against anybody criticizing Stalin or the revolution, and it was taken out of print and out of circulation. So I think there was one copy that was finally printed at that time, and it went circulated. I think it was finally published in slowly more accurate editions in Russia in the 80s. There was an English translation. I forget who it was now. I want to say Mira Ginsburg. I may be wrong. But anyway, there was an earlier translation of this book that some people read. But it has finally been published by this kind of fascinating guy, Robert Chandler, and his wife Elizabeth Chandler. And they have a kind of little collective of Russian translators who've published quite a few books, including Vasily Grossman, most notably, and most of Platonov's most important books. They've been kind of recovering, establishing proper editions for the Russian edition, and then translating into English, which is a bit difficult because his language the way he plays with language can be difficult to translate, I'm sure. Anyway, that's the very brief story here. This is the final. It's just coming out in November. I've read bits and pieces of this book over the years and liked what I read a lot. And so I look forward to reading this, and I've read it all the way through now, and I've enjoyed most of it. I found it a little long, to be honest with you. I found it a little bit long. I mentioned in the piece there's some jokes that kind of get repeated over and over again, and it gets a little confusing sometimes because of the time shifts, something that kind of annoys me. I'm not big into lots of time shifts and lots of point of view shifts in novels. That's just me. It's me. It's not you. It's not them. And so that sort of threw me off a bit. But the actual heart and power of the book is kind of undeniable. The idea is it's told largely from the point of view of a young boy who's an orphan. I think the first 100 pages is the best part of the book, which is about this young boy growing up. He has a kind of old guy, kind of old working stiff, who kind of helps him who tries to help this boy when he finds out what happened to him. The kid's father wants to know about death. So he goes out and drowns himself in the river, I think it is, or the lake, thinking he's going to go check out death and then come back, and he never does. It's not really magic realism. That one little incident doesn't really give you an idea. I try to say about it in the piece, he doesn't write kind of, it's not like Marquez or anything like that, or Master and Margarita by Bulgakov. It's very realistic in its way, but it's about the kind of horrific nightmare of these of the most poor people in the world, really just incredibly poor people, the Russian peasantry, some of whom would live on nothing but sunflower seeds. There's one character where the opening chapters are about this kid named Sasha Dvanov, who's an orphan from a young age. He's taken in by a family that has too many kids already. They can't feed. And they often send these children off on expeditions for months to find bread. I don't think it's fantasy at all. It's just really about these kind of horrifically poor people. And after the revolution, many of these people, like Platonov himself, really thought that maybe something good would come of this, and worked hard to make these collective farms and bring some connection to all these poor people. At one point, one of the characters says, I think I can quote it to you. One of the characters says something like, they're so poor, this one character says, all we can possess is other people. That's why we now have comradeship. The term comrade is important because they can't possess any land, property, food. They're just so poor. So it's about all these various characters who come out of the revolution. There's some are just highway robbers, and then there's political apparatchiks who are going out into the countryside trying to organize these collectives. And Sasha gets involved in the creation of what's supposed to be this kind of utopian community called CHEVENGUR, which is basically built on the graves of the bourgeoisie who were slaughtered in this kind of horribly violent. There's one of the most beautifully written, horribly violent scenes in the book is about these people being slaughtered, and eventually this place being built on top of them. I'll read a little passage just to give you an idea of something that recurs over and over. We talked about this in Platonov's The Foundation Pit, that there is this feeling in Platonov that he's trying to provide testimony of what happened to some of these people and the horrors that kind of lie underneath the ground. And that one of the characters I find a little annoying, named Kopyankin, he looks over the common grave of the bourgeoisie, which was without trees, without a mound, and without memory. The CHEVENGUR bourgeoisie had been slaughtered definitively and conscientiously. Not even life beyond the grave could bring them any joy. After their bodies, their souls had been executed too. And this is a kind of recurring idea in the book, which is that these bodies were not just killed, these people weren't killed, but their memories were eliminated, and their souls and everything that everything that was important to these people's lives have been eliminated from the history of this country. And that seems to what bothers Platonov throughout this book. Anyway, I wanted to it's a wonderful edition. It has a terrific introduction. Chandler writes one, and afterward. It also has a wonderful essay in the back, which is by a guy named Vladimir Sharov, and I can't remember who the hell he is. Anyway, I think he's a contemporary Russian writer. He's talking about how when he first read Platonov, he mentioned something that I don't think I understood until I read the way he expressed it. He says, when he first read Platonov, I read something by a person for whom none of this was true, for whom everything about Soviet power felt warm, everything touched him to the quick, moved him, made him suffer, who was brought to ecstasy by its slightest success. So what he's talking about there is that when he was reading in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of critical work about the history of Russia and the history of Stalinism and the horrors of that time. But they didn't touch on the aspirations and the attempts for creating a better society, which was also occurring during these horrors. And he said, this is one of the first books that gave me that sense. And then one other little line, he said, when I read Platonov, I have the constant, purely physical sensation that he fears picking up these people, the memories of these people, or touching them. For this same reason, their flesh is so thin, so decrepit, and they themselves so weak, that you could all too easily damage them, wound them. This is something that was also in the Foundation Pit. This sort of sense, throughout the book, you feel, is this great sense of sensitivity for these victims and for the people who were in this hugely difficult period of history and who suffered in so many different ways. And I think that is what comes through in the book. Especially if you're interested in Russian history, contemporary Russian novels, then it's definitely worth trying. It is a bit challenging, and I found it a little boring in large parts, but almost every page, even some of the boring parts, there were some beautiful, beautiful passages. Anyway, there's CHEVENGUR, Andrey Platonov. You say tomato, I say tomato. Happy bathing. We're going to do a few of these very quickly, and I hope they're as imperfect as this one.